The story begins on a cold winter morning in Seattle. Samantha Bennett, a 38-year-old woman, goes through life with a heavy and suffocating routine. After the end of a relationship lasting almost 10 years, she feels lost and disconnected from the world around her. Working as a manager at a large technology company, his daily life is marked by endless meetings and unattainable goals, leaving little room for anything other than work. As she hurries to the office, her mind full of worries, Samantha finds herself stopped at a crosswalk. The traffic light closes, and she impatiently looks to the side and notices an elderly man trying to cross the street. The frail-looking man appears hesitant, his cane shaking in his aged hands. Without thinking much, Samantha approaches and with a quick gesture offers her arm to help him cross. When they reach the other side, the elderly man, who introduces himself as Henry, thanks him with a soft smile, but something in his eyes catches Samantha's attention. It's a deep look, full of untold stories, that leaves you intrigued. Henry, grateful for the help, insists on offering coffee to repay the kindness, and despite her initial rush, Samantha decides to accept. In the cafe next door, they start talking. Henry reveals that he is a war veteran, but after the death of his wife and the loss of contact with his children, his life went into decline. He lives alone in a small apartment and spends his days wandering around the city, trying to find some meaning in the loneliness that consumes him. This confession deeply affects Samantha, who also feels lost, although for different reasons. As the conversation goes on, Samantha realizes that there is something therapeutic about being with Henry. He speaks with a serenity that contrasts with his fragile appearance, and little by little she begins to share her own pains and frustrations. It's as if meeting Henry opened a door so that Samantha could see herself more clearly. At that moment, an unexpected connection is established. As they say goodbye, Henry gives Samantha a small metal amulet, saying that it helped him find strength in the most difficult moments of the war. "May he guide you too," he says, with a hopeful smile. Samantha, moved, keeps the amulet and promises herself that she will not let Henry return to the solitude in which he lives. As Samantha walks back to work, she feels something different inside her. Meeting Henry planted a seed of change. Back at her desk, surrounded by spreadsheets and urgent emails, her mind returns to Henry's scarred face, and she finds herself thinking about how his life unfolded so bitterly. For the first time in a long time, Samantha feels the need to do something meaningful, something that goes beyond her own problems and her exhausting routine. In the days that follow, Samantha begins to visit Henry regularly. Each encounter reveals more about his life, his battles, his regrets, but also his hopes. These visits become a kind of therapy for Samantha, who begins to question her own choices and the life she leads. Henry, on the other hand, seems to be revitalized by Samantha's company. The friendship that blossoms between the two brings light to both, and in the midst of these interactions, Samantha discovers that helping Henry rebuild his life is the way for her to also find her own redemption. As the days go by, Samantha finds herself increasingly involved in Henry's life. She begins researching support programs for veterans, trying to find resources that can help them live a more dignified life. In one of his visits, Henry mentions that he has had no contact with his children for years, who became estranged after his wife's death. This breakup is something he carries with deep sadness, but also with resignation. Samantha, touched by this story, decides that one of the ways to help Henry would be to try to reunite him with his family. She begins to investigate, using her research skills she developed on the job, and discovers that Henry's children are living in different states. However, when trying to contact them, she is met with great resistance. Both sons blame their father for past events, and the pain of losing their mother is still fresh in their memories. At the same time, at work, Samantha begins to feel the consequences of her involvement with Henry. She starts missing important meetings and missing deadlines, which does not go unnoticed by her superiors. One day, her boss, Mark, calls her into a closed-door meeting. He confronts her about her performance and makes it clear that if she doesn't focus, her position will be at risk. This conversation shakes her deeply. Samantha realizes that she is torn between two lives, the professional one. Despite the pressure at work, Samantha can't stay away from Henry. He became an anchor amidst the chaos his life had become. One day during a visit, Henry mentions that he has always dreamed of returning to the small Vermont town where he and his wife spent their early years of marriage. "It's the only place where I truly felt at peace," he confesses. Henry's desire touches Samantha's heart, and she decides that she will do anything to make this dream come true. Meanwhile, Henry's health begins to decline. He has good days when his mind is sharp and his steps are firm, but also bad days where tiredness and pain dominate him. Samantha realizes that time is running out, and this leads her to intensify her efforts. She manages to persuade one of Henry's sons, David, to visit him. David arrives in Seattle with many reservations, but upon seeing his father's condition, he is overcome by a mixture of anger and compassion. The meeting, however, is not easy. In the midst of all this, Samantha faces a major internal crisis. She begins to question whether she is doing the right thing. His career, which has always been his identity, is in ruins. Their personal relationships, which were already fragile, deteriorated further with their new focus on Henry. However, every time she thinks about giving up, Henry's face and the hope he has placed in her stop her from backing down. David, after a few days of living together, begins to better understand what his father went through after his mother's death. He realizes that his separation was a way of dealing with his own pain, but that this does not diminish the love he feels for his children. Over time, father and son begin to rebuild a bridge between them, even if hesitantly and painfully. This reconciliation, although still fragile, fills Samantha with hope. She believes that if she continues to help Henry, perhaps he does. At the same time, Henry's health continues to deteriorate, and Samantha finds herself at a crossroads. She needs to decide whether she should abandon her career and dedicate herself entirely to helping Henry, or whether she should regain control of her professional life, something that has always defined her identity. The pressure at work intensifies, and Samantha is forced to make difficult choices that test not only her resilience, but also her character. During a visit to the hospital where Henry is admitted after a heart attack, Samantha meets the nurse who cared for him during the war, a woman named Margaret. She reveals to Samantha that Henry was a hero, someone who always put others before himself, but that the war changed him in ways he could never fully overcome. Henry's story and the difficulties he faced, even after the war, make Samantha see herself reflected in him. They both fought lonely battles, carrying the weight of the world on. This meeting with Margaret is a turning point for Samantha. She decides she can no longer live a divided life. Inspired by Henry's resilience, she resolves to take control of her life and make choices that truly reflect who she wants to be. Samantha resigns from her position, much to the shock of her colleagues, but she knows it is the right decision. She will dedicate herself entirely to helping Henry find peace and purpose, something that, for a long time, she herself did not have. With her dismissal, Samantha throws her heart and soul into the mission of taking Henry back to Vermont, where he wants to spend his last days. She begins planning the trip, organizing everything to make it a smooth and meaningful journey for Henry. At the same time, she continues to work to reunite Henry's family, trying to convince Claire to join them. However, the road to family reconciliation is full of challenges, and Samantha will have to face her own demons to see this dream come true. The trip to Vermont was scheduled. Samantha had carefully arranged everything, from medical details to accommodations, to ensure that Henry could fulfill his desire to return to the place where he and his wife shared their first years together. David, now more reconciled with his father, agreed to accompany them, hoping that this journey would help heal the remaining wounds. However, just a few days before the trip, Samantha receives an urgent call from the hospital. Henry had a serious complication and was rushed to the emergency room. Fear grips Samantha's heart as she rushes to the hospital, praying he's okay. Upon arriving there, she meets David and the doctor in charge, who informs her about Henry's critical condition. The situation is delicate, and the doctor warns that, if they want to make the trip, they will need to act quickly, as Henry's time is running out. This moment puts Samantha in a deep dilemma. She knows the trip poses a risk to Henry's health, but she also knows how much it means to him. However, when she talks to Henry, even though he is weakened, He makes it clear that he would rather risk everything to return to Vermont than spend his last days in the hospital. "Life is too short for regrets," he says, holding Samantha's hand with surprising strength for someone in her condition. Determined to make Henry's wish come true, Samantha makes the decision to go ahead with the trip. She and David begin planning a way to get Henry safely to Vermont. A private plane is provided, with medical assistance on board. During the preparations, Samantha receives an unexpected surprise. Claire, the daughter Henry hasn't seen in many years, decides to join them. Despite her reservations, Claire realizes this may be her last chance to reconnect with her father. When Claire arrives at the hospital, her reunion with Henry is emotionally charged. The words they have been unable to say over the years flow out, bringing to the surface a whirlwind of feelings: regret, love, pain, and finally, understanding. Claire, who has always carried anger over the way her father handled her mother's death, begins to see things in a new light. She realizes that the distance between them was fueled by both grief and the fear of facing loss head-on. The trip to Vermont takes place in an atmosphere of tension and hope. Henry, despite being weak, seems revitalized by the presence of his children by his side. Samantha watches this family dynamic unfold, feeling a mixture of joy for Henry and melancholy for her own life. Along the way, as they pass through peaceful landscapes and roads lined with autumn trees, Samantha reflects on the choices that brought her here. She realizes that this journey is not just about helping Henry find peace, but when they arrive in Vermont, the weather is serenely beautiful, with the sky tinged with shades of orange and red. The small town, where Henry and his wife made so many memories, welcomes them with an almost ethereal tranquility. Samantha feels relieved to see Henry smile as he breathes the fresh air of that place that means so much to him. They settle in a picturesque inn, surrounded by hills and forests. Henry, despite his tiredness, insists on visiting the old cottage where he and his wife lived. When they get there, he is thrilled to see that the place is still standing, like a time capsule that preserves his memories. David and Claire accompany him to the small back garden, where Henry kneels to touch the ground. "She loved these flowers," he says, referring to his wife, as silent tears stream down his face. This moment is deeply transformative for Samantha. She sees, for the first time in a long time, a family healing, finding redemption in the midst of shared pain. What she doesn't immediately realize is that this experience is also healing her own wounds, ones she barely recognized until then. As the days in Vermont pass, Henry seems invigorated by the closeness of nature and the warmth of his family. He shares stories of his youth, his inner battles, and the strength he found in his wife's love. Claire and David, once so far apart, begin to reconnect, sharing memories and laughs that had long been forgotten. Samantha, who had almost become part of the family, looks on with a sense of accomplishment and a new perspective on what really matters in life. However, on the last night of the trip, Henry, knowing that his time is running out, asks Samantha to accompany him for a walk under the stars. They walk in silence to a hill overlooking the valley. There, under the starry sky, Henry makes one last confession. He tells Samantha that despite all the difficulties he faced, he never lost faith in people, and that her kindness was a gift he never expected to receive in the last years of his life. "You gave me more than I could ever imagine," he says. Samantha, moved, realizes that Henry was, in a way, a guide on her own journey of self-discovery. He helped her realize that life is not defined by professional success or material achievements, but by human connections and moments of genuine compassion. The next morning, Henry doesn't wake up. He passes away peacefully at night in the place he loved most, surrounded by those who mattered. His departure is felt deeply by everyone, but there is a peace that permeates the moment, as if he has finally found the rest he so deserved. Samantha, alongside David and Claire, organizes a simple and intimate funeral in Vermont, where they bury Henry next to his wife, as per his wishes. During the ceremony, as the gentle breeze moves through the trees, Samantha reflects on the impact Henry has had on her life. Not only did she help transform his final days, but he also helped her find her way again. After Henry's funeral, The small Vermont town takes on a special meaning for Samantha. The calm air and mountains in the background, which so enchanted Henry, offer her a refuge to process everything that has happened. Alongside David and Claire, she helps take care of the last things left by Henry. During this time, the three develop an unexpected bond, a friendship forged through shared hardship and loss. Samantha, however, knows that the peace she has found in Vermont is temporary. She must return to Seattle and face the life she left behind, a life that now seems distant, as if it belonged to someone else. Upon returning to the city, reality hits her hard. Her bills, responsibilities, and the feeling of emptiness that accompanied her before meeting Henry return with intensity. However, something changed deeply within Samantha. She can no longer ignore the desire to live more authentically and meaningfully. The decision to leave her previous job was the first step, but now she needs to discover what she really wants for herself. The days in Seattle pass slowly, and Samantha begins to feel trapped in a monotonous routine again. To fill this void, she starts looking for other ways to reconnect with the world and the people around her. Inspired by Henry's example and the strength she found in him, she decides to get involved in volunteer work with war veterans, something she had never considered before. This work proves to be a source of great satisfaction for Samantha. She is dedicated to listening to the stories of those, like Henry, who bear invisible scars. With each conversation, she realizes how important it is for these men and women to have someone who listens to them, who validates their experiences, and who helps them find a new perspective on life. Through this work, Samantha begins to heal from her own emotional wounds. She finds a greater purpose, something that fulfills her in a way. However, adversities continue to arise. Samantha faces financial difficulties after leaving her job and is forced to look for another way to support herself. Life in Seattle is expensive, and the savings I had are starting to dwindle quickly. She finds temporary work that helps support her while she continues her volunteer work, but financial uncertainty brings a new layer of stress. In moments of discouragement, Samantha remembers Henry's words and the amulet he gave her, a constant reminder to you. At the same time, Samantha keeps in touch with David and Claire. The friendship they form deepens and they support her on her journey of self-discovery. David, who has returned to his hometown, finds inspiration in his father's example and decides to reconnect with his own family, from whom he had become estranged. Claire, in turn, begins working on a personal project that she has always put off, finding the strength to move forward after so many years of resentment. One day, Samantha receives an unexpected letter from Henry's lawyer. When she opens it, she discovers that Henry has left her a small inheritance, a modest but significant sum, along with a personal letter. In the letter, Henry thanks Samantha for everything she has done for him and his family, and expresses his hope that she will continue to pursue a life of meaning and connection. "What you gave me is worth more than any amount of money," he writes. "Use this to find your own happiness." This inheritance, although modest, offers Samantha an opportunity to start over. She decides to use part of the money to fund a veteran support program in Seattle, a project she had started developing during her volunteer work. The project, called Caminos Cruzados in honor of the encounter that changed his life, aims to provide emotional support and resources for veterans who, like Henry, need help reintegrating into civilian life. Caminos Cruzados starts as a small initiative, but soon attracts the attention of other people and organizations that share the same vision. The project grows, and Samantha finds a new passion in developing support programs and support networks. She becomes an active voice in the community, advocating the importance of caring for those who have given so much of themselves. As the project expands, Samantha also allows herself to grow and evolve. She begins to explore her personal passions, things she had put aside for so long. He returns to writing, something he has always loved, but had abandoned due to the demands of his previous career. Her work with veterans inspires her to write about her experiences, the stories she has heard, and the importance of human connection. This writing process becomes a new form of self-discovery, allowing you to reflect on everything. As time passes, Samantha sees the fruits of her labor. Caminos Cruzados becomes a point of reference for veterans in Seattle, and the impact that the project has on these people's lives is immense. She sees each success as a tribute to Henry's legacy, and it gives her deep and lasting satisfaction. The emptiness that once consumed her is filled with a sense of purpose and fulfillment that she has never experienced before. Samantha's journey was not easy, and the adversities she faced tested her resilience and determination. But in the end, she finds a new balance in her life. A balance that comes from the combination of her passions, her meaningful work, and her renewed relationships. She became a different person, stronger and more connected to herself and the world around her. As the Caminos Cruzados project gains strength and recognition, Samantha begins to feel that she is finally finding her place in the world. However, success brings new challenges. As more veterans and their families seek help, the demands on Samantha and her team increase exponentially. This also raises questions related to the sustainability of the project. The initial funds she had received from Henry have now been almost fully invested, and the project's growth requires a new financial steer. Samantha begins looking for partnerships and donations, but soon discovers that the world of nonprofits is highly competitive. Furthermore, some large investors are more interested in causes that bring visibility and immediate financial return, something that Caminos Cruzados, with its focus on emotional support and personal rehabilitation, cannot guarantee. The wear and tear begins to show, and Samantha finds herself once again under pressure, this time fighting to keep the organization that, in the midst of these difficulties, Samantha receives a tempting proposal from a large Seattle businessman, Martin Royce. He offers a generous donation in exchange for becoming the project's main sponsor. However, there is a catch. Martin wants Caminos Cruzados to become more marketable, adapting its activities to include high-visibility events, such as advertising campaigns and partnerships with big brands, which would somehow compromise the essence of the project. Samantha finds herself faced with a difficult choice. On the one hand, accepting Martin's proposal would guarantee the project's survival and allow it to grow even further. On the other, she fears that giving in to these demands could dilute the true mission of Caminos Cruzados and turn it into something that Henry, with his humility and focus on the individual, would never have approved. Pressure increases when Samantha is informed that, without new funds, Caminos Cruzados will have to drastically reduce its activities, affecting hundreds of veterans who depend on the support offered. Feeling on the verge of collapse again, Samantha decides to seek advice from people she respects, including David and Claire, who have become close confidants. David and Claire have different opinions on the matter. David, ever practical, argues that accepting Martin's proposal, albeit with some concessions, is the best way to ensure the work continues. Claire, however, reminds Samantha of the importance of maintaining the integrity of the project and suggests that perhaps there are other ways to obtain financing without compromising the principles that guided the creation of Caminos Cruzados. Divided and not sure which way to go, Samantha decides to visit the place where Henry was buried again, in Vermont. She feels like she needs to be close to him, even if symbolically, to find clarity amid the whirlwind of emotions and pressures she faces. There, in front of Henry's grave, she remembers everything he taught her about resilience, about the importance of small things, and about how true impact is measured not in numbers, but in transformed lives. This deep reflection makes Samantha realize that, regardless of what happens, she cannot betray the essence of what Caminos Cruzados represents. Having decided, she returns to Seattle and refuses Martin's offer, choosing to maintain the project's independence. She knows it might mean facing tough times, but she also knows she's doing the right thing. Instead of settling for what seems to be the easiest solution, Samantha decides to focus on smaller partnerships, but aligned with the organization. To her surprise, Samantha's brave decision ends up inspiring others to get involved. Small donors begin to appear, including veterans who have been helped by the project and their families, who make modest but sincere contributions. A crowdfunding campaign is launched and quickly gains traction on social media, with the support of ordinary people who identify with the cause. The climactic moment occurs when Samantha, at an event organized to thank donors and celebrate the success of the project, receives an unexpected surprise. During the event, a letter is read in public, a letter written by Henry, which had been given to the lawyer with the instruction to be read when Samantha was at a decisive moment. In the letter, Henry expresses his confidence in Samantha and his pride in what she was able to accomplish. He writes about how he believes the true strength of Caminos Cruzados is in the love and compassion she puts into everything she does. Remember, Henry says in the letter, that what you are building is not just a project, but a new life for you and everyone you have touched. Trust your intuition, and you will always find the way. Henry's words, read aloud, deeply touch everyone present, and Samantha feels a surge of emotions, gratitude, love, and a new confidence in herself. At that moment, she realizes that Henry, even after his departure, continues to guide her, and that she has within herself all the strength necessary to overcome any obstacle. The event ends on a high note, with more people pledging to support Caminos Cruzados. Samantha, surrounded by friends, veterans, and their families, feels like she has reached a new level in her journey. She realizes that the true climax of her story is not the success of the project itself, but the internal transformation she experienced. The discovery that by helping others, she also helped herself heal and find her true calling. After the event that celebrated the success of Caminos Cruzados and the reading of Henry's letter, Samantha feels that she has reached a new balance in her life. The decision to maintain the integrity of the project was an important milestone for her, not only as a leader but as a person. She realizes that although the path she chose is more difficult, it is aligned with her values and everything she has learned since her first meeting with Henry. The project continues to grow, but in a way that reflects Samantha and Henry's original vision, centered on humanity, care, and genuine connection with the veterans it serves. The small donations continue to flow, and Caminos Cruzados becomes an example of how a collective effort, based on solid values, can prosper even without the support of large investors. The community around the project grows stronger, and Samantha finds support in people who share her vision. Samantha also reconnects with parts of herself that she had neglected during the years of struggle. She returns to writing, now with a new perspective, and begins documenting the stories of the veterans she met through the project. Not only does this work provide a creative outlet, it also helps give a voice to those like Henry, who have often been forgotten by society. The book she writes, entitled Caminos Cruzados: Stories of Overcoming, becomes an unexpected success, not so much because of the sales volume, but because of the emotional resonance it finds with its readers. The stories Samantha shares touch the hearts of many people, inspiring them to reflect on their own lives and the importance of human connections. Part of the profits from the book are donated to the project, helping to ensure its continuity. Over time, Samantha finds herself more at peace with herself. The anxieties and insecurities that once dominated your life begin to give way to a sense of purpose and fulfillment. She realizes that throughout her journey, she has learned valuable lessons about resilience, compassion, and the importance of following your own path, even if it means facing unexpected challenges. David and Claire remain close, and the friendship between the three grows even stronger. They continue to support Caminos Cruzados in many ways, and Samantha feels grateful to have found such loyal friends in the midst of adversity. She also finds new friendships within the veteran community and their families, creating a network of support and love that sustains her in her moments of doubt. Eventually, Samantha decides it's time to take the next step in her personal journey. While Caminos Cruzados continues to be a central part of her life, she is beginning to consider other ways to expand her impact, perhaps exploring other initiatives that could complement the work she's already doing. With this in mind, she starts planning new projects, always with the same focus on authenticity and connection. The final arc of the story culminates in Samantha reflecting on the meaning of everything she has experienced. She remembers Henry's words, how he encouraged her to follow her intuition and never lose sight of what really matters. Samantha realizes that although the path ahead of her is still uncertain, she now has the confidence and wisdom to face it with courage and determination. In the final chapter of her journey, Samantha pays a visit to the place where it all began, the street where she first met Henry. As she walks down the sidewalk, she passes the crosswalk where she helped him cross. A soft smile appears on her face as she realizes how much her life has changed since that day. Samantha pauses for a moment, looking across the street where a new day is beginning. She feels the weight of all the experiences that shaped her, but also the lightness of knowing that she has finally found her place in the world. With one last look at the place where it all began, she crosses the street feeling stronger and more complete than ever. Months after the release of her book, Samantha receives a letter from a young veteran who read, Caminos Cruzados, Stories of Overcoming. In the letter, he thanks Samantha for sharing the stories that gave him hope and inspiration. He mentions that, through the project, he found the strength to start over and reconnect with his family. The young man writes, Not only did you save my life, but you also gave me the courage to believe in a better future. Thank you for being the light I needed in my darkness. Samantha, moved, keeps the letter in her office next to the amulet that Henry gave her. She knows that although the path ahead of her remains uncertain, she will always find strength in the connections she has built and the impact her journey has had on the lives of others. Samantha's story ends with the promise of new beginnings and the certainty that, in every challenge, there is the opportunity for growth and transformation.